Me, 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 me. Well, hooray and hallelujah, and welcome to Tom Rhodes Radio Smart Camp. Are you punch drunk from staying inside your home or apartment all day, every day? We sure have been. So this week we have kind of loosened up a little bit because we've been so strict with ourselves. My mom stayed inside for 1 month completely, like Anne Frank. I mean, not, of course, not as bad as Anne Frank, but you get the metaphor, and I'm sure you're feeling it. And this week, we started taking walks around the neighborhood, just for a little sanity, just to not feel the confinement of the walls of my apartment. And I mean, I knew this already, but I'm really appreciating it, how much beautiful plant life and flowers there are in my neighborhood. What do you think about these walks we've been taking, Mom?
Oh, I think they're great, and so happy to go outside and walk in the sunshine. It's so different than just staying in all the time, and a welcomed relief. And tell them about our how we do this.
Well, I mean, it's I don't mind giving away where I live pretty much, which I have to do to tell the story.
Oh, okay.
But I live next to the Grove and the Farmers Market, which are landmark places in Los Angeles. A lot of people take dates there, and so it's been interesting. Especially the first month of this, when I would walk through there, the place was completely empty. I mean, and you only saw the tour guides. I'm sorry, the security guards, not tour guides. And this is an empty shopping area. But now
nice.
Now we've walked through there. That's not how we start our walk. Now they're putting chairs out, and you're seeing more people out there.
Well, we walk through the park first, and then we go into a neighborhood.
We got Pan Pacific Park, and so when we walk by it, there's the Holocaust Museum of Los Angeles, and it's
closed.
Of course, it's closed, but I mean,
Right.
it is a chilling reminder that people had it a lot worse than we do,
Right.
We should tough it up a little bit.
Well, and be grateful for what you do have.
Yeah. So we're seeing, people are exercising in the park. One of the returns to normalcy that I appreciate is you see Mexican guys. I'm assuming they're Mexican, but one guy's got a little ice cream cart, and another guy's selling kind of cheap plastic toys. And that always gives me the feeling of Los Angeles when I see these guys, and a lot of families are out in that park on weekends normally. Now a little bit,
Yeah.
but seeing these two, independent entrepreneurs selling their ice cream and their little plastic toys makes me feel like something's back to normal.
It's almost like going back to normal. And then people walking their dogs. Of course, we've seen people walking their dogs since we started walking. And you got to walk your dogs. And a lot of people exercising. We saw a lot of people.
A lot of people are exercising. I mean, the park isn't full like it normally is, but you're definitely seeing a lot of people out there. Some people were out there boxing. Other people were little units of 3 doing, jogging around cones.
And people having picnics under trees. That was kind of neat. We tried to bring some bread to feed the squirrels, but it looked like either they were too full or just were not interested in bread.
Yeah, I think we should probably try nuts.
Nuts
Because we
would
walked through there a
probably
few
be
weeks
better.
ago, and there was a guy, the squirrel came up and took the nut out of the guy's hand.
Yeah.
So, but these streets are there's so many amazing plants in this neighborhood, and they've been let grow for years and years and years. I didn't know there's fig trees in our neighborhood.
Yes.
And we saw that fig tree yesterday that was taller than the house.
Right.
And there was just like thousands of
Loaded with figs.
green figs all over.
Yeah. And we saw some more fig trees, smaller ones, but still pretty good sized.
So if I ever want to start painting nude models, I'll know where to find the leaves.
But I'm happy to see all the roses. They're just proliferate. Lots and lots of roses.
Those beautiful yellow cactus flowers we saw
Yes.
today blooming. There's morning glories that have taken over. I didn't know until you told me that morning glories take over other plants. And you pointed that out to me, how they've just took over a tree or a bush.
Yeah, they climb over stuff. But, the funny thing about the morning glories here, that here we finished our walk around noon, that wherever I've lived and there were wild morning glories, they would come out and be in full bloom, and then they would kind of fold. That's why they were called morning glories, because they were out in the morning. And here they are, at noon, they're full up at noon. It's amazing. But beautiful.
they're still open.
Yeah, they're still
all
open.
day long.
Well, I'm not sure it's all day, but for sure they're
Every time we see them.
every time we've seen them. Yeah.
And bougainvilleas, I always love that
Everywhere.
word. And
Lots
the
of
jacaranda trees have got the
Yeah.
purple flowers on it. That's one of my favorite things about Los Angeles is these jacaranda trees. And I'm growing one on my balcony. Every year they get these beautiful purple flowers. They're stunning.
And how the walks up to the houses have flowers on both sides, and it's just beautiful.
Beautiful manicured yards with every kind of exotic plant life.
And some of them, that do not grow in Orlando, so I really appreciate them.
Yeah, and so, we've done it for our sanity, and we're, going out, once a day now to have a walk, and it's nice to feel sunshine and a breezy fresh air blowing on your face when you're not wearing a mask.
I've taken a whole lot of pictures of these plants. Not running up on a yard or something, but using a zoom on the pictures. So I've gotten quite a few pictures to remind me of our walks.
Yeah, and what do you think about the Los Angeles and the neighborhood? Oh, and then the kitchen store that we love.
The kitchen store,
which
yeah.
is on the corner of Fairfax and Beverly.
I love that.
It's called the
kitchen
Bargain Kitchen Store, I think. It's been there for like 40 years.
It has really good prices. I can't believe it, and you can find most anything, any tool for cooking. Lots of, it's full of things.
Every kind of kitchen thing you could imagine, whether for a restaurant or your home. I bought a potato masher. They got everything.
It's really a great place to shop.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool that they've been open, and that's a place we like to pop into. So this episode today, we're going to talk about movies. It's Mommy Movie Talk.
Okay.
And the first one we did, I think we covered like 30 movies. We watched a movie
a lot
every night for a month, and however many weeks it's been since the last time we talked about films. These are the current batch of, and we had some winners and we've had some real stinkers. So hopefully you'll be honest about the ones that you thought were stinkers. And so I forgot to mention, the very first time we talked about movies, Space Jam was the first movie that we watched during the quarantine virus lockdown movie festival. And you remember that with the Looney Tunes and Michael Jordan? They played
yes,
these.
that was a pretty good. I enjoyed the movie.
I like it, and it's funny they're playing basically. If they lose the game, they're going to have to go to this amusement park in outer space and be stand-up comedians at this attraction and tell these stupid jokes over and over and over every night. Like, what a terrifying nightmare to think of.
For sure.
Doing like a corny act over and over forever.
But it came out for a happy ending at the end. It was cool.
And you like the happy endings.
I do.
Michael Jordan and the Looney Tunes.
It was well done. I think kids would enjoy it also.
Yeah, I think anybody would enjoy that movie. So the next movie we watched was Crazy Heart with Jeff Bridges. And I think another thing we've learned in this this virus lockdown period is how much we love Jeff Bridges in every movie. Anything Jeff Bridges is in Seems to be a mom favorite.
good movie. I've been a fan for a long time.
I remember when Ashton and I were driving around America, basically living out of my car. That's when we saw that movie, and he's playing in bowling alleys, and just doing like really shitty gigs, and he's driving and he's peeing into an old milk jug and stuff. We were amused by that movie.
No, it was pretty good, I thought, even though, I don't have to have a happy ending, but it had something to say that was important. And he got his act together by going to AA. And there was not a happy ending, but it was a really good movie. I thought, of course, I like him as an actor. It had a story.
Yeah, and then, he's a drunk, and he meets this great girl, and she's got a kid, and then he watches the kid. They're in Houston, and he takes the kid into a bar, and then he loses the kid.
The kid wanders off, so
he cleans his act up in the movie, but she doesn't get back with him. So it's not, and there's no reason.
She entrusted him with her treasure, and he lost the kid. I mean, honestly, you can't trust somebody who loses your kid. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's...
Even though the kid, wandered off, it wasn't on purpose, but you can't come back from that.
Yeah, that's a deal breaker.
Yeah.
I remember there was a comedian in Florida years ago when I started. God, what was that guy's name? But he used to do a joke about babysitting his friend's kid, and the kid was playing in the oven or something. He was worried, like, if the kid gets killed, I mean, it's hard to still ask for your money from babysitting.
I would definitely not ask for any money.
The next movie, so we stayed with the Jeff Bridges. That we watched True Grit, the remake of the classic John Wayne movie,
and that was really good.
That was good, and I thought the young girl was brilliant in it.
Yes.
I think it's Matt Damon who's plays the other guy, the other bounty hunter, or whatever his thing is, and he says to she's like, whatever, 13 maybe, and super smart.
Young, yeah.
And he says something like, I was tempted to kiss you, but and then she like totally shuts him down and says all these things that he's inadequate at, and she says, and she just throws in, and if you wet your comb, you might be able to tame that cow lick.
Yeah, it was. She sure had some good lines, but the original movie did too. She was really terrific. Both actresses did so well. I really enjoyed it. It had a story, and it made sense. Something to tell. I enjoyed movies that have something to say. That definitely had something to say.
I liked it. They stayed true to the big famous scene at the end where Rooster Cogburn is the character played by John Wayne, and then Jeff Bridges, where he's going against these, what is it, like 7 guys, one guy against 7, and they're in the field and they charge at each other, and he says, "Fill your hands, you dirty son of a bitches," or something like that. Like,
Don't remember that exact moment, but
arm yourselves. It's a famous scene from the John Wayne movie.
Overall, it's a great movie. I really enjoyed it, so I recommend that movie.
Okay, and then we stayed with the Western theme. The next movie we watched was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
I saw that when it first came out years ago.
I read what's the guy's name? The book's right over there. The Kid Stays in the Picture. The producer guy. He talked about that movie, and he was pissed off in that movie that they wanted to include that hit song, "Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head." And there's the scene in the movie where the bicycle and Paul Newman is riding the girl on the handlebars of the bike. And they're playing "Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head," and like that's where I discovered that song. And I always thought that was a great happy song.
Where that came from, but it was a happy song.
But yeah, so it's funny that we don't even think twice about that. And
yeah.
At the time, that was like, hey, let's put a big Pepsi truck in this shot.
And in a way, that had a happy ending, even though, not for crooks and stuff. But
Well, it didn't have a happy ending because they all get murdered by the Colombian military at the end.
Oh, I was thinking
Remember
of the
that?
time when they got away. Yeah,
They get away the once, and then they go to South America.
Right. I'm sorry. That's
And remember
right.
they showed, and then South Americans look kind of bumbling and
Well, they
inept.
make it. Yeah, when you're doing a movie like that, you always make everybody else look stupid. But hey.
Well, but it's white people being heroic and all the non-whites looking stupid is a
Well, it took an army to
long-running
kill
theme
them.
in cinema.
Yeah, well,
So, but yeah, and
not
then the
necessarily
last,
true, but hey, that's how it is.
it's been in
been in
enough
movies,
films to be
yeah.
notable, and especially the movies that we've watched, like when we talked about The Treasure of Sierra Madre.
Yes.
They showed the Mexicans like
Yeah.
there's wild bandits holding up trains and.
Yeah, that's true, Tommy. But, just because they portray them as stupid doesn't mean they're stupid in real life.
Yeah, of course, but
Yeah.
Hollywood
Hollywood does
sometimes
Yes.
throughout the history of cinema
Yes.
has portrayed non-whites to be kind of stupid and
Yes.
inferior.
that. Yes.
And in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, I pointed that out when
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
they're showing the South American village, and they're kind of all lazy and at the bank lying
they
around,
can't
and,
put two and two together.
and
And,
the police weren't
inept and all that. Yeah, it's the usual. Yeah, I forgot about the ending. I just remember the part when they got away.
Yeah, that's when they jumped off
Before they
the
went to
cliffs
South America, yeah.
in Colorado or something. And in the very last scene of the movie, they're surrounded by the Colombian military, and then they run out, and then the shot freezes in this heroic
Well, they're
shot
gonna be dead.
of them, and then
There's a whole army against them.
they
yeah.
die in a rain of bullets. So then I've got all these Clint Eastwood, the spaghetti westerns, and they're called spaghetti westerns because they were made in Italy by Sergio Leone. I think he did all of them except for the last one that we watched that we'll talk about later. But the good and the bad and so we watched A Few Dollars More.
Yeah.
And I just remember the Mexican guy was such a badass. I liked that the wanted poster of him was a shot of him smiling. And other than that, I don't remember too much. Oh yeah, he's with God. What was that other actor who was in The Good, the Bad, the Ugly?
Good heavens, I never remember names. I'm sorry.
Cliff Van something.
Oh yes. He was on quite a few of those, I think.
Yeah, and they're bounty hunters, and then they're gonna team up. Okay, I don't.
It was a good movie. I like all Clint Eastwood's movies.
So then we watched The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which is the classic
Right.
of all of them, and with the famous music, the doo-doo-doo. And that movie, I hadn't seen it in over 20 years. Is 3 hours long. And then it gets kind of silly at the end where they show. Remember, there's the Civil War. It's the North fighting the South.
Yes, that was kind of.
But he's in the West.
Yeah.
There was no Civil War battles in the West, and they're
Yeah.
clearly in the West. And then
the short, like the North and the South. It was kind of. It didn't fit.
No, there's like desert mountains and desert terrain and rocky mountains. There was no.
It just didn't fit
in Arizona or Utah or Colorado. There was no.
It was a little odd.
Yeah, and then he's going to blow up the bridge. Remember, he goes. They're stuck in this situation. Him and Ugly, and Good, who's Clint. He goes in. It turned into kind of like a Looney Tunes cartoon at that point, where they look down and there's all these boxes that say explosives, and then he saunters down in the middle of
And
this
nobody stops him.
Civil
and
War battle.
He doesn't get even shot.
Nobody
shot at.
not even shoots at him.
Yeah.
And then he wires the bridge with dynamite and blows it up.
It does seem a little out of whack.
And then the next movie we watched was The Legend of 1900. And you remember when last month, I had heard I thought it was a movie about a guy playing a piano on a ship going around the world. And we watched that really shitty movie, 1900. Well, I discovered we found the correct movie.
Yes.
It's not called 1900. It's called The Legend of 1900. And
half right.
this guy's born on a plane or on a boat, and then he grows up and he plays piano on this boat. Never gets off of it.
And he was a wonderful piano player. And it had a story. It was pretty good. And I kind of understood the ending, but it was not a happy ending, but I understood it.
Yeah, where he just decides to die on the boat that's being scrapped.
It's like nobody knew there was no paper to say he was born. It was like he didn't have a country. He didn't have, he didn't belong anywhere.
He had never gotten off the ship.
He never got off the ship.
And then he has such a famous reputation as being a piano player that Jelly Roll Morton, this famous jazz pianist, whenever this was supposed to take place in the 1920s or whatever, comes on the boat and they have a piano contest. Like
and people bet on him, and he was great. He won.
No, so
it was a pretty good movie. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It was good.
I liked it, and I liked it because it wasn't that other movie we thought.
No,
the 1900 movie was so bad.
Yeah, this one was way better. My goodness, we suffered through the other one for a little while. Well, as long as we could take it.
Yeah, and there's been a few that we've suffered through, and then I guess one of the first of the disturbing movies that and then listeners to the podcast have sent me suggestions of movies that I should watch with you, and I wish I would have used more of those suggestions because it's interesting to find out. Like almost every movie has something that's disturbing to watch with your 81-year-old mother
or your son.
So So after The Legend of 1900, we watched The Revenant.
Yeah, now we should quit saying 81-year-old mother like I'm some old lady or something.
Well, I mean, I think it's 81 something to be proud of, Mom.
Well,
I mean,
okay, no problem, honey.
You have 8 decades of experience and wisdom and knowledge to.
It just happened, and it went quick. Love you, honey.
I love you too, Mommy. So do you remember The Revenant with Leonardo DiCaprio, where there's that bear attack?
Oh my goodness! And so I'd say maybe half the movie I covered my eyes in half the movie, but I think he was he is a really good actor, and it probably was so very much like it really real life.
The fur trappers, and there was a lot of scumbags and
the Indians attacking and stuff. It was probably very much like it really happened. I had read a story about a real story about a guy that was attacked by a bear and half his face was cut off, and he survived when people thought he had died, was dead. They just left him there and went on. And I thought maybe they took that from there. It was a really bad attack. Well, it's a good movie. Hard for me to look at, but he should have won an award for that.
I think he should have won Best Actor for that good movie.
My goodness. And it probably was very much how the frontier really was. More true I think it was more true to life than the frontier things we've watched our whole life.
Oh yeah, like those Clint Eastwood movies. People get shot and there's not even blood. It's like
still like the movies.
They just roll over. after The Revenant, we watched Judy, the big, and then, what's her name, won the best actress for that. Was it Renee Zellweger? Is that?
Yes, yeah. I thought she was really good too, and she had the mannerisms down. I thought the songs were great. It was kind of pitiful what an awful life she really had. You know, when you see these people that you think are having wonderful lives because they have fame and fortune. Fame and fortune don't seem to give you a really good life. That was not a good life.
Yeah, no, and the Hollywood studio guy that gave her the role of Wizard of Oz kept telling her, "You're not the prettiest girl in America," and like really mind fucked her.
Well,
and her
mother
self-esteem and confidence.
Her mother should have been there, to help her, protect her from these people. They were just trying to make money off of her.
Yeah, they're giving her pills to,
It was terrible.
Speed pills to keep working, and then pills to sleep at night.
And to think that was probably true, it's kind of disgusting.
One thing I forgot to mention when we talked about the bargain kitchen store, the girl that works there was wearing a Stevie Wonder shirt, and I asked her what her favorite Stevie Wonder song was, and she said, "Knocks Me Off My Feet." I told her my favorite Stevie Wonder song is "Boogie on Reggae Woman," but there's a song that Stevie, and you and I have been listening to Stevie Wonder more than anything.
Well, his cheerful songs.
They're happy, wonderful songs.
We need them at this time more than ever.
And he does my favorite version of a song that Judy Garland sings in this movie, and that's "For Once in My Life I Found Someone Who Needs Me."
That's a great song.
Beautiful, happy song.
Yeah.
But Judy Garland, boy, and that scumbag guy that she brought over there.
Yeah, I'm afraid she had
bad taste in men.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. All right, so then the next movie.
Well, I said, good grief, we're going to have to start watching some girly movies here.
Yeah, so, well, before we got to that, and then the Judy Garland movie was kind of a bummer because,
bad ending.
Bad ending. She dies, and she's an alcoholic, drug-addicted mess.
It was a shame. I mean, really.
So I thought I would choose a comedy to lift us up after that, and I chose the movie Bridesmaids.
Oh, yes.
Which I thought was a hilarious movie when I saw it years ago, but I didn't remember how dirty that film is.
It was pretty bad.
So many sex jokes, and then the girl takes a shit in the middle of the road.
Well,
they eat at that Brazilian restaurant.
Yeah.
They have bad food, and the bridesmaids and the bride-to-be are all trying on, very expensive bridal dresses, and then they all get severe diarrhea.
Yeah, it was, but it had a story,
well, I mean,
if you overlook the language and a whole bunch of stuff, it did have a story.
Well, my memory of that movie was that it was like a funny woman's movie.
Not really.
And and like the story of friendship and sisterhood, and then after watching it, it is that, but only for the last 5 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
It's sex jokes and shitting in the street.
I'm glad I didn't pay to see that. But hey.
So the next movie I chose was Woody Allen's Midnight in Paris.
Oh, yeah.
And, that's a good movie. It's enjoyable, reliable, pleasant entertainment. And you can say what you want about Woody Allen, but in not one of his films does anybody take a shit in the middle of the street while wearing a wedding dress, like in the Judd Apatow film. The guy every night in Paris, he goes out and he gets into a taxi cab.
It was a little far.
Takes him back in time to the 20s, and he's hanging out with Hemingway and Gertrude Stein, and
he just happens to meet all these very famous people. It was a little far out, but it was entertaining.
Well, I thought it was funny because they're showing the relationship with the guy and his fiance, and they're a terrible match.
Terrible match.
And every time they'd show a scene with them, you and I would turn to each other and say,
"They're not going to make it.
They're not going to make it." So,
but it was entertaining.
Yeah, I think that's that and Blue Jasmine. I think are Woody Allen's best movies. Did you see Blue Jasmine?
No.
That was a good one. Again, not a happy ending, but Midnight in Paris had a happy ending, and that's your main criteria for movies.
I've got other criteria, but it has to have a message or something that's worth my 2 hours of sitting there and watching it, or an hour and a half or whatever. I'm paying with my life by watching this. I want to either be educated or have something to think about, or just what are they trying to tell me? Is it worth my time? Some of it isn't. But like the Covenant, I'm not sure how to say
The
that.
Revenant.
Revenant. That was worth watching. I could hardly watch the violence of it all, but it was probably very lifelike, really, and it had a lot to say about how rough it really was for the early people that lived here. So it's more than worth watching, but hard.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't like movie, even though I could hardly watch these scenes.
Well, I don't like horror movies, and I don't like horror books.
Yeah.
And I don't. I want to keep that shit out of my brain, and so I understand you feeling uncomfortable during a 10. I think everybody who saw that film felt uncomfortable for that 10-minute horrific bear mauling.
Well, yeah, there were other parts, but that one in particular. But that's probably about how it is when a bear comes after you.
Yeah, it's probably not a pleasant experience.
Probably not.
So the next movie we watched was The Only Living Boy in New York. And this has Jeff Bridges in it. And I had never heard of the film, but I had the DVD. I bought it somewhere, and it looked like a happy romantic movie. And so I wanted to stick with that theme for you. And you remember they're living in New York City, and the kid's bored. He says the best neighborhood in New York is Philadelphia. He's got these kind of his dad, Pierce Brosnan, however you say his name, Remington Steele, is the dad, and he runs a book publishing company. And then the kid finds out that his dad is having an affair. And the kid's pissed because he loves his mom so much. So he starts following the girl that the dad's having an affair with. And he's like 17, something like that. I really liked it. There was some really great dialogue in the movie, especially early in the film, between him, the young boy, and the girl that he's got a crush on. But then he starts having sex with the British woman who's having an affair with his father.
It was kind of crazy. Yeah.
And then Jeff Bridges plays a guy who's a writer, and he moves into the building where the kid lives, and kind of starts mentoring him.
It's a pretty good movie. It's got some odd things like, his father is having an affair, and then the son has a relationship with the girl that the father's having an affair with. So it was complicated. I thought it was a good movie anyway, and that it did have something to say, because at the end you kind of get that the father said Jeff Bridges to help his son, and really the son wanted to write and somehow he was afraid to show his father anything, I guess, so he showed it to Jeff Bridges, who thought it was good.
Yeah, and then the DVD that I had pooped out at the very end. We didn't get to see the last couple of scenes in it. And,
that was a shame, because we watched 99% of this movie, I think. And so we made up an ending that the family starts going to church more often. And that's the end of the movie. So the dad stays with the mom, and the whole family starts going to church together more often. So that was we made our own ending, which may or may not have been the ending of that movie. But it was a pretty good movie. And I had something to say, so...
I liked it. And again, anything with Jeff Bridges in it is usually
really good.
Top quality. So I thought we'd go back to comedy, and I threw in Talladega Nights. That's the stock car racing movie with Will Ferrell.
Oh, yeah, that was kind of silly.
There was, I remember, there's a scene where he says grace for a long time, and he's talking about the baby Jesus.
Oh my goodness.
And then his wife criticizes him, and one of his kids says, Dad, you made that Grace your bitch. You remember that?
Well, I thought the whole thing was ridiculous.
I thought, man, this was a wrong choice to watch with my mom, too.
Well,
this and Bridesmaids. Don't watch Talladega Nights or Bridesmaids with your mom.
Well, you know... sometimes you have to overlook the language and stuff, but in case there's some redeeming quality about the movie. But that movie was kind of silly the whole time. I guess they were making fun of people that card raced, actually, is what I took away from that film. It was so silly.
The stock car racing world?
Yeah, I thought, like, they're trying to portray them as absolutely stupid. And I don't think card racing people are all that stupid. It's like another, okay, they're car racing people, and so they've got to be stupid. Well, I don't really agree with that. And I thought the movie was kind of stupid itself, which I probably am. Being judgmental, but
you did not enjoy that movie at all.
It was silly. It was silly. You could chuckle about something.
And me personally, I think the only reason stock car racing is considered a sport is because the drivers have to hold their pee for so long.
I don't think they even think about that, Tommy.
So pretty much at this point in our movie watching schedule, you insisted that we watch some girly movies.
Yes. It was about time,
basically for some surefire winners.
Well.
And so we watched a couple of classics. Your favorite movies, number one, Sleepless in Seattle.
Yes, I thought that was great. Had something to say about a guy loving his wife, and the wife dies, and it was a romantic comedy, a romantic movie, and... a girly movie.
I had never seen the movie, so I was happy to see it.
It was
and
good.
See what all the fuss was about. I mean,
it's really
considered a classic.
His
wife dies.
Too,
he moves with his son to Seattle for change of scenery and to start a new life and get away from the memory of his dead wife. And then the son calls in to one of these nationwide love programs. What's that one woman who's...
Delilah.
It reminded me of that. The Delilah show. And he gets on the phone, and then Meg Tilly is across the country in Baltimore and falls in love with him.
Well, it looked like the way he was describing his wife and how much he loved her, that a whole lot of people fell in love with him.
Yeah, and then Meg Ryan had she had a fiance. She was engaged to, and then she's fallen for this guy's voice, and anyway, she ends up, and then that's it. They're going to meet at the top of the Empire State Building, and meet.
Well, the only part I thought was a little far-fetched was that, but maybe doable, I don't know, that how the kids decided to get an airline ticket and fly to New York. Like he's in Seattle, Washington, he flies to New York, and then the father comes home and he doesn't find the kid, and then they're trying to find him, and oh, he's in New York, so then he flies out to New York, and that seems a little far-fetched, but who knows?
Yeah, and then they go up there, and
but it's a
she's not there, and then the kid leaves his backpack, and then they go back to get the backpack,
and then she's there, and they meet, and love at first sight kind of thing.
It was,
it's a girly movie.
Yeah, I mean, the template for every Hallmark classic romantic movie. So after that, you got to do the salt and pepper, peanut butter and jelly. They go together. After Sleepless in Seattle, we watched You've Got Mail.
Yes.
And in this one, Tom Hanks is his dad, and him and his family. They own this big chain bookstore, and they moved into the Upper West Side and opened this big chain box store. And it's going to hurt the small business bookstore owned by Meg Ryan. And again, in this film, she had a boyfriend at the beginning, and he's with a woman, and
bad matches.
Bad matches. But this was a cute movie, and I liked, their bookstores.
Yeah, and it was it had a story, something to say. I thought it was really good, but it's a girly movie with a happy ending.
And then they meet in Central Park at the end. They're writing to each other. They don't know that they know each other, and then it turns out in the business world they're rivals, and she hates him, and she's going on TV railing against the big chain store and, Save Me, the little bookstore, and then they meet at the end, and they're the one they've been secretly writing to each other. In that movie, it was interesting to see just the old computer technology of You've Got Mail, and what computer screens look like, and how ancient the lettering was.
Yeah, and it probably wasn't that long
in the
ago.
90s.
Yeah, yeah, it was interesting. I liked it. But it's a girly movie.
Well, my girlfriend cries her eyes out at that scene at the end when they meet in Central Park, and
Well, I don't know why. I cried when they met up in the
Empire State. You did. Oh my God! I've never seen you cry so hard.
Well, I don't usually cry, to tell you the truth. But that was...
You cried?
Oh, I cried. All of a sudden, it was like, oh...
My mom cried her eyes out at Sleepless in Seattle when they meet on the top of the Empire State Building.
Well, I think it was, just a dream of it, like how unreal it was. I don't know. That you always... this love between people and stuff. And how real life...
The romantic thing of...
It's not quite like that, but
yeah.
I mean, well, maybe it is for some people.
Any other thoughts on those two romantic classics?
No. But they're girly, and I liked them.
They're girly movies, nobody dies, and they both have happy endings.
Yes, and you don't have to shut your eyes through some
Unless
scenes.
You're the boyfriend or fiance of Meg Ryan, and then it's not such a happy ending. Then we watched the Bill Murray movie St. Vincent, which you had never seen before. Remember, he's the drunk neighbor. Melissa McCarthy, single mother. She's getting divorced.
Oh, yes.
She moves there with the son next door.
That had a lot to say. It was I thought it was a really good movie.
And then Bill Murray starts babysitting the kid.
It was, had its moments, but it was a really good movie.
I like that movie. And, he's taking him to the track.
I think it was a happy ending.
Taking him to bars. He's teaching the kid the most important things in life.
Well, not exactly.
I'm kidding.
But it was, it had something to say.
Yeah, and I love, there's just a thing at the end of that movie where Bill Murray, when the credits are running, he goes into the backyard of his house, the back of his house, and he's got like a Sony Walkman on, and he sings along to this Bob Dylan song. I absolutely love this movie just for that scene alone, where he's singing this Bob Dylan movie. And Melissa McCarthy is genius in everything. And I met her a couple times. My friend Billy Gardell did the show Mike and Molly with her, and I went to 2 tapings, and both times I met her after the taping, one of the nicest human beings I've ever met in show business. So
Yeah, I thought
I'm a fan of everything she does.
Yeah, she was a really good mother in this show.
Yeah, and then there was the trust thing where she finds out that he's been taken. She's getting in the divorce court with her her husband, and he had a private investigator follow him, and then that's when she finds out that Bill Murray's been taking him to the track and the bar, and that Bill Murray hangs out with a Russian prostitute.
Yeah, she wasn't, having a fit and stuff. She wasn't happy about it, but I thought in the movie, of course, she handled it perfectly, actually.
And she lost full custody.
Yeah,
because
so
of
then
that.
It was half. And then at the end, of course, I think she gets full custody back. Mm-hmm. So it had a happy ending.
That's a good movie. So the next film we watched was a movie that I really, really loved this movie. And this is one that you hated the most. It won Best Foreign Film about 5 years ago, and it's called La Grande Bellezza. La Grande Bellezza. The Great Beauty in English. Do you remember the guy? It's the first like 30 minutes of the movie is this Italian Roman celebrity nightlife, and there's wild people.
Yes, they. I thought they had a good premise. The guy sees his life, and he's 65. He's kind of wasted his whole life partying, so he's waking up about it. Well, the movie showed it in the first 5 minutes, I thought. Then they kind of rubbed your face in it. And it was, okay, I got it. Go on. So then what? I didn't think it had any...
you said it had... You said the film had... You said the film had no redeeming social value.
Yeah, that's what I
and
thought.
We didn't... I don't think we made it 30 minutes before you asked to stop.
I think we did make it 30 minutes, or at least more than that, because it was like, watching paint dry or something. It was like, oh my God, how many times can you do this? Okay, yeah. And when they had somebody's kid who was having mental problems, and they show him painted in red, naked in the hallway. Okay, I get it. The kid was kind of not so. Oh, all right. So then you have to. We actually even spent time. The main person, the hero of this story, going to a pole dancing place. Okay, so then we get to see people pole dance. Okay, so honestly, I didn't see any. Well, the redeeming thing from this movie was they had some great scenes of Rome, but it wasn't enough to offset this movie. All right, that's just my idea.
Yeah, and what I remembered about the movie was, here's a guy, he had written a great book, and then he becomes a celebrity, and then he gets swept up into this, party world of Roman nightlife, and he's thinking about these flashbacks of his younger life and where he remembers back that it was the innocence of this first love story he had with this girl is when he had his greatest moment as a writer. And, kind of like Bridesmaids, my memory of the film wasn't the reality of all the shit that you have to digest to get to that sweet little caramel center.
We may have even seen 90% of that film.
I don't. We definitely didn't make it halfway. So then he's writing for a magazine, and he has to cover. He writes for a snobby arts magazine, and he has to cover this art event where these people are outside, and it's just some ancient Roman brick viaduct, and this female performance artist has got a stage runway set up. She's totally naked. She has her her pubic bush is dyed red, and it's got the communist hammer and sickle on it. So her pubic region is like a communist flag, and then she runs up full speed into the wall, and then she's dazed and her nose is bloody, and then she staggers back to the front of the stage and she says, "I don't love you." And it's like, it's such a pretentious you know, art thing.
Painful. And it's supposed to be art. Give me a break.
Well, and then he puts her in her place when he meets her and everything. But it was disturbing to watch that. And then the thing that you mentioned, and then there's a kid with the mental problems, naked in the hallway, painted red.
Yeah.
And he's saying shit to his mom. And I think that's when...
Oh, and you think that's artsy? I mean...
I don't think that's artsy at all. That's when we took the movie off shortly thereafter.
Yeah, well, it was
I didn't remember there was that in the movie. Like, I didn't remember there was someone shitting in the road in the Bridesmaids movie.
Well, I tell you what, after the first 5 minutes, if you hadn't been there, I would have shut it off.
Well, that was a big...
I was trying.
That was a big thumbs down on the mom movie watching.
Yeah, well.
So then the next movie we watched was the biopic about Hank Williams, I Saw the Light. And I love Hank Williams. He's one of my perennials. Hank Williams, James Brown, and Van Morrison. Those are the three artists that I go back to all the time for religious purposes.
I knew every word of all his songs. I didn't realize what an awful life he led also. It was kind of sad to see if that was his real life or part of his real life.
That was his real life.
It was pitiful.
Songs came from a painful place.
Again, telling you that money and fame aren't really satisfactory.
Yeah, and, my friend Faye Woodruff, the female comedian woman, she was known as the grandmother from hell. She had a real southern accent and she was really dirty. And I've been talking to her recently, or I've been checking in on her every week or so, because it's good to reach out to your friends and people you know are isolated. And her husband loved Hank Williams. And I remember when I first went to Nashville in my early 20s and he drove me around, and I wanted him to show me where all the Hank Williams sites were. And Hank Williams' wife was named Audrey. And I'll never forget Joe Woodruff driving me around Nashville, Tennessee, and he said, he just said, we're talking about Hank Williams, and he just said, Audrey fucking around on him's what ate him up. So that's where those songs came from. It was, you know, he was cheating on her, she's cheating on him.
Good songwriter. I really enjoyed his music. I still enjoy his music. We're playing
Hank Williams.
Yeah. And yeah, I liked his music and stuff. Sorry he had such a lousy life. It was sort of pitiful.
What's the music what have we been playing the most? We've been playing Stevie Wonder, Hank Williams.
Hank Williams. Well, you have so much music. We've been playing all.
And Johnny Cash.
Yes.
Oh, and then the Bob Dylan. It's the full sessions from the Nashville Skyline album that he did with Johnny Cash in 1969.
And you played some classical stuff too.
Vivaldi, that's my dude. And then the Beethoven Napoleon thing. Okay, so after I Saw the Light, Fantastic Mr. Fox, this animated movie. I had never seen it before. And they're foxes, and he moves into this tree house next to 3 chicken farms. And I absolutely loved this movie. I thought it was hilarious. There's great laughs in it. And I think of this list, I think this would be the one that I would recommend the most to anybody listening to this?
Well, it was pretty good. I really enjoyed it too.
Funny jokes. There's so many different famous people doing the voices for all these characters.
It was good.
And it's George Clooney is fantastic, Mr. Fox, and that is a really, really great movie. So then we went back to a mom request, and this is one of your favorite movies. You asked me to look it up, and it's called Crossing Delancey.
Yes.
It's got Amy Irving in it, and I forget the guy who stars in the movie, but he was in Animal House. I love this guy. He's been in a ton of movies. And why do you love this movie so much?
I considered it a girly movie also, and it had a story. So I remember that Pickles, that he was a pickle store owner, and so I'm not sure why, I just thought it was a great movie, and when we watched
from 1988.
When we watched it, you said, "Oh, you recognized the area in New York." Of course, I didn't recognize the area in New York, but
Because you've never been there.
right, I passed through New York once on my way north. Oh, we stopped at the Statue of Liberty, but just kept on going after that.
So what do you like about Crossing Delancey so much?
That it was a happy ending, feel-good kind of movie, and it had a story to say. It had something to say.
I really like this movie. And number one, the thing I liked about it the most, for the last few years when I go to New York City, I stay in my friend's apartment at Delancey and Bowery. So that neighborhood, the whole movie was shot in that neighborhood that I really love. And if I moved back to New York City, I would move to that neighborhood.
It was a cool area, and the people were very interesting. And it had a story, like she worked in a bookstore, and they had these people that wrote books, talk about their books.
Oh, the French writer guy. Yeah. She's kind of got a crush on him.
Yeah, but he just wanted to use her as a secretary and stuff, and she thought he was romantically interested, but no. It was a really good movie. She thought somebody that sold pickles wasn't. He wasn't
artsy enough for her.
Well, it was like. Yeah, maybe that was it. She was a little snobby. But at the end, they got together, and it was a happy ending kind of a thing.
Yeah, well, I think she was kind of rejecting her Jewishness of the neighborhood she grew up in, because her grandmother lived in that neighborhood, and she keeps going to see the grandmother, and then the grandmother helps her to, she brings in like some matchmaker, and grandmother was instrumental in bringing the guy into her life, and she doesn't want anything to do with him.
Right.
And then she keeps, pining for arrogant French writer guy, and he just wants her to be his assistant.
Yeah.
And then she realizes pickle selling Jewish guy from her neighborhood
really cares about her.
Really cares about her, and he's actually a really great guy.
Yeah. So it all ends well. So it's kind of like a girly type movie.
Girly movie, I really enjoyed it, and for 1988,
I'm glad you did.
I thought it still held up.
Yes.
Then the next movie we watched was Keanu Reeves' A Walk in the Clouds, and I haven't seen that movie in 20 years, and I remember that it was a romantic movie, and I wanted to give you a good movie to watch. He comes back from World War II, and then as he's getting off the ship, this other sailor says, you want to do something? He goes, no, I got to go see my wife. And he goes, let me guess, you met her on a Friday, married her on a Sunday, and you shipped out on Monday. And he says, yeah, that's pretty much it. And then he goes to his wife's to see her, and he had written her a letter every day while he was fighting World War II.
4 years. For 4 years.
4 years. And she didn't read any of his letters. She read the first one and never read any of the other ones.
she showed him how she had kept all of them. I guess she thought that was a big deal. She kept the letters. She didn't even know that he was coming home that day, and so she was not there, which was a terrible disappointment to him. And he just decided to think about his life and this woman he married without knowing who she really was. And so he, I guess, went home.
Well, he left. They lived in San Francisco, so he gets on a train to Sacramento, and then he gets on a bus.
Well,
remember the girl? She threw up on him on his jacket.
Yeah.
That's how they meet. She threw up on him on the train, and then now after they get to Sacramento, they're on a bus going to Napa, in the wine country.
And this one really had a story to say, and it was very good. An absolutely wonderful movie. Really, I really enjoyed it. And they had Mexican people, and they were not portrayed as being stupid.
Yeah, this was good. They were like kind of an old vineyard family.
Yeah.
And they could trace their family history back 400 years.
Yes.
To Mexico, and then Keanu Reeves plays like an orphan guy.
Yeah, and that was...
The dad won't... So the girl who vomits on him on the train is Mexican, and she's going home.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Turns out she's pregnant, and he says, well, why don't I just say, I'm your husband?
Well, she was afraid to show up without her husband the way her father was, and she was right, because I don't know what would have happened. But, he was more sound than bite, you know?
The dad. Who wouldn't accept him.
Who wouldn't accept him, who didn't want her with an American guy, and especially since he didn't have any roots. You know, he had, who are you? Where did you come from? He had no history. Where they had history and they knew their ancestors, and he was very proud of that. And he was tied to the land and building this great grape empire. And they had a cool scene where there was a frost. It must have been further north in California. I don't know California that well.
Yeah, Napa's north of San Francisco.
Okay, so...
I've taken you there. We've driven around. It's
the
wine country.
We did go to the wine country. So, but I can't say I'm familiar with that area or even this area, just your little neighborhood that we're looking at now. But so they had a frost, and they had a scene where I guess this is the way they did things in the old days, where they had these things that were attached to their arms, and they had
like fans.
Fans, and they kept fanning the grapes to.
So there's a frost. They ring a bell, and then they set up all these little kind of fire stations.
Yeah.
Where they're like these big kind of stove burners, and they're burning for basically like a big trash can full of flames. But the people put on these little these arm
things that are attached
wings,
to the arms. Yeah,
and then
like
so
wings.
they're fanning the heat onto the fragile little grapes.
Yes, and they're acting like it's like they're butterflies. So you could picture them walking around as though they're butterflies trying to get heat to these grapes so that they don't freeze all the way through. And I remember in Florida, people would turn their sprinklers on to keep the oranges. Ice would get on the oranges, and somehow it would protect the oranges. But I don't, and I know that they have put heat things to protect the oranges. So it was interesting to see that. I've never seen. I've never seen it even in movies, how they did that, butterfly thing through the...
Well, that's the best scene of the movie.
It really
and that's
is.
the scene that I remembered the most because it's so
different.
All the workers and the family all rush out there to save the grapes, or else that harvest is going to be lost. And, of course, Keanu Reeves can't do it properly, and then the girl demonstrates to him, and she goes, like a butterfly.
Yeah.
Do it like a butterfly, like
And
move.
they worked well together, and it's a great movie. I recommend the movie.
I really enjoy the movie, and it's Keanu Reeves, very young, not too far after the Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure period. So he still kind of talks in the movie like, I really like you, and I'd like to do the honorable thing for you, and it's like he's.
Well, I thought he was.
I think he's great. He's handsome, and even though that's an older movie, I think
it's a great movie.
It's a cute film.
Yeah,
but he is a little California dude-ish.
Okay.
Still in the movie, but and then the next movie we watch is probably one of your favorite movies of all time, from 1956, My Fair Lady, with
Yes.
Audrey Hepburn.
And it's a musical and great music. My goodness, so many hits came out of that.
Get Me to the Church on Time. I remember that's one of them.
On the Street Where You Live. Why Can't a Woman Be More Like a Man? It was an interesting movie. And what's really interesting about that movie at this time that we watched it, that I had forgotten, I remembered the music, but I didn't remember the specifics of the story, that he was a linguist. And the difference in England, the difference between people that were educated and not educated, and it was more or less a bet with this other guy who was also a linguist, that he could turn this violet seller into a lady.
So Audrey Hepburn is an uneducated London street person who sells flowers, violets, and knowing the premise of the movie, you want her to be turned into a lady as quick as possible, because I thought the beginning of that film, her London Cockney accent is just so loud and so bad.
It's pretty loud and bad. Yeah.
And then Richard Harris, he plays the linguist, and he picks her up off the street and brings her into her home, and his home, and of course she has an alcoholic father who doesn't like to work, and he comes by for he wants handouts. A little money and handouts.
Well, it's not that real life kind of movie, but none of the musicals where every 2 seconds somebody starts to sing, and it's a wonderful song. But it's a happy-go-lucky kind of song. I mean, it's got a hard story, I mean, the people were struggling at the bottom of the heap, and
well, it's interesting how he can tell how and it blows me away in England how people can tell like what region they're from, and what level of education they've had, and he's like an expert at that. He's like guessing. I with a little Welsh.
He can narrow
I bet you
down.
grew up in whatever village, and your father was probably Welsh.
And he got it down because he could understand the connotations. It was. Oh, I loved the movie. Probably not.
I think 1956 was your year, so that's when, because you loved Elvis. Elvis hit in 1956, and My Fair Lady. That's when that came out. So it's interesting for me to think about things that I was into in my high school period. Like those were the big pop hits that you enjoyed.
Yeah, there were a lot of musicals in those days. That one was really well done.
Well, and you had mentioned before about Audrey Hepburn. The sad thing was, in all these movies, she was always paired with some older guy.
Yes, and this was no exception.
Yeah, and then there's a younger guy who's got a crush on her, and he's waiting for her in front of the house, and
that's when he sings On the Street Where You Live, which is really a pretty romantic song.
But she doesn't like the young guy her own age. She likes Richard Harris.
Right.
And Audrey Hepburn is in her 20s in the movie, and Richard Harris is in his 50s. And I'm sitting there thinking, this is so unrealistic.
Well,
you'd
it's a
never see this
musical.
in real life. And then I think to myself, wait a minute, my girlfriend's in her 20s and I'm in my 50s, so now would be a good time to shut the fuck up. So it is possible. After My Fair Lady, we watched the last of the Clint Eastwood spaghetti western movies, Hang 'em High, and this movie was was two big thumbs down.
Well, it wasn't up to his standard.
It's the worst of all of them. I'd say the other ones. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is great. But
it did have a story, but it.
I mean, The Good and Bad and the Ugly is
Yeah.
long, and then it gets kind of chumpy and stupid at the end. Hang 'em High, it felt like a '70s TV show. It was, it went on forever. There was really long scenes, and the plot was as thin as
Well,
rice paper.
it wasn't his best, that's for sure. But it had a story.
It had a really shitty story, Mom. We both really didn't like Hang 'em High at all. And the next movie we watched was the Clint Eastwood classic, Gran Torino.
I liked.
And we
Gran
both
Torino.
loved that movie.
Yeah, that was great. Bad ending, but of course, in a way, it was a happy ending because he took care of this gang, but he died.
So he's an old Ford factory worker from Detroit who stayed in the neighborhood in Detroit, never left, and then all these immigrant people move in. And there's so many racial slurs in this movie. And so there are these Asian people, the Hmongs. They move in next door to him, and he's "Get off my yard." And the line that I always remembered from the movie was "Get off my yard, zipperhead." But he never actually says those words together. He says zipperheads a few times, and
Boy, sometimes you have to overlook some things to get to a deeper meaning, and
but it's the strength of his character.
Yes.
He's in the bar telling a racist joke.
Right.
He's of an older generation. He's racist. His family, his two sons with their children. The opening scene is at the funeral of the mother. Mm-hmm. And the one kid's wearing a football jersey, and then the daughter comes, and she's got her midriff showing, and they're all
total
materialistic.
disrespect for the mother.
Yeah, and then the girl wants his Gran Torino car. They want him to move into an old folks' home and take his thing. And then it turns out he's got more in common with the immigrant people who live next door than he does with his own family.
Right, and he had to think about all this, and he was trying to save the boy next door who had tried to steal the Gran Torino. It's a really good story. I mean, you got to overlook the language.
That's part of the movie. That's why it's great, because he's a flawed person.
But it's
who
really
you
well
still
done.
like because he's got a moral compass stronger than his shallow materialistic family.
Right.
And they just can't wait for him to die so they can divide up the money on the house and someone take the car.
He knows they're going to dump him in an old people's home, and he's sick, and so he's weighing everything. After something, the gang rapes the girl next door and beats her up, and so he takes revenge on them for sure. Makes sure that they're all put away for a long time. The whole thing was well done. I thought he did a really good job portraying the whole thing. There are some movies that are hard to have some hard messages, but they have very much redeemed.
That Asian girl in the movie was incredible. I can't believe I haven't seen her in more films, and it's
really
so
good.
Disturbing when she comes back and she's all beaten up and everything.
Terrible.
I mean, you really feel the anger that Clint's character feels. I think that's one of Clint Eastwood's greatest films.
He's really good at it. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, if I think that movie will stand the test of time a lot longer than the spaghetti western movies by
I enjoyed
Clint.
them too.
Yeah, but they don't hold up. What is it, 30, 40 years ago those movies were made? I wanted to show you the Quentin Tarantino movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I know there's no way you could handle the violence in it. But the Leonardo DiCaprio character in that movie, I didn't realize, is basically Clint Eastwood. He's a guy, because Clint Eastwood was in, what was it, Wanted Dead or Alive, this 50s black and white cowboy TV show. And then he made these spaghetti western movies. And then those movies made him a movie star.
Okay.
And that's basically what happens in the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood movie. It didn't hit me until we were watching these Clint Eastwood movies that's where they got the inspiration for that movie. And then the Charles Manson, and remember those fruitcakes, the whatever they called those.
Yes, I remember
his
those.
followers. It's a fantasy film where the Clint Eastwood character ends up killing all of the Charles Manson people.
Good grief. It was a terrible thing. It was a terrible
Yeah.
thing, and it was real. That's what really happened.
Well, we've learned that we both love Jeff Bridges and we both love Clint Eastwood. And unfortunately, we ended our quarantine film festival, this episode of it, with I just wanted to get your reaction from this movie. We watched Parasite last night, and this movie won not only the best foreign film, but it won the best film of the year. And what did you think about this movie?
Well, they're not making movies like they used to, but I don't care that it won all these awards. There were so many loose ends from the beginning of the movie that I was trying to understand. That I did not enjoy it even from the beginning. I could see these poor people, and in a way, the opening scenes were a drunk neighbor would come and
Pee in front of their house. They live in a basement.
Yes, and they had the windows, and that reminded me of a movie I saw a while back about the Irish people, and I don't remember the name of it, but I wish I could remember the name of it. But the same thing happened there, where a neighbor would come and relieve himself by the door of this family, and the father would go out and try to stop them from doing that, but the other person was a big bully, and the father could do nothing about it. And that reminded me of that scene. And then it went on about they were a family that was unemployed, and the son of the family, the poor son, got a job with a rich family. And by the time he tried to get a job for his sister, acting as though it was somebody else, not related to him and stuff, I said to you, I think they're going to try to replace all the servants. And you just looked at me, and because I like to think ahead sometimes, where is this leading?
You are really good at guessing where a movie's going to go. When we watch movies, you'll always go, I bet this happens, and then it usually happens.
Well, I've seen enough movies, but not as many as I've seen in my lifetime. I've seen enough movies where I can kind of tell where it's going. And in a way, I like movies that I'm wrong, that it's not quite the way I think. And this was that way because it was leading, the way it was leading, it seemed to me that they were going to, the next step, they were going to get rid of the rich family. That's what...
We watched the whole movie, and 5 minutes before the end, you asked me to stop it and turn it off.
Yeah, I was...
Like, we watched Grand Balazza, and after, I think, 34 minutes, you said,
it was
I don't feel like watching this, and that's understandable.
Yeah.
But for Parasite, last night, we're 5 minutes from the end, and the son, Kevin...
I could just see...
is going down into the basement with the Prosperity Rock, and then he drops the rock, and then he said, I've seen enough.
I knew he was going to bash somebody's brain in or some darn thing. I knew people were going to die.
You knew so there was going to be some murder was about to happen.
There was a suspense thing, and that, this guy and his, was living in their... basement. Well, it was more like
a bunker for in case North Korea shoots missiles.
I didn't know enough about the North Korean, the South Korean people to know, how the rich people didn't understand that these people were of a different class level, or how the wife would just not even look at the documents, fake as they were. How she didn't know that, whoever she takes in her house will have an impact on her children. And it looked like, it didn't show that they were going to school. It just showed that the rich people were just being tutored, and it didn't look like they had friends that came in, and they were very isolated. The whole thing, there were so many loose ends that did not seem to tie in my head, that I did not enjoy the movie from the beginning, and I don't care how many awards it won.
Well, it's impossible not to have a strong feeling about that movie. And what I thought when I saw the movie is it's kind of like 3 or 4 different genres. Like the movie starts out, it's kind of like a comedy, and then it becomes like a mystery, and then it's a drama, and then it's just it is a suspenseful film. At the end, you don't know what it. When the woman, the first maid who gets fired, when she comes back, and the parasite family that's sucking off the rich families, and they're having a little soiree.
Oh, they were drunk.
They're drunk and eating the food.
And they're disrespecting these people's property terrifically, and how they even broke stuff. And the rich lady calls and says she'd be home in 8 minutes. And all of a sudden they hide everything. And I'm supposed to believe that in 8 minutes, the rich family walks in their house and doesn't see anything wrong. Where they
3 of them hiding under the table.
Oh, please.
The coffee table.
Well, it wasn't the hiding under the table that was so unreal. They had drunk all the people's wine and whiskey or whatever, and they had broken stuff. I mean, that'll take a little more than 8 minutes to clean up. I'm sorry. It just was so many loose ends. I'm supposed to believe this. I want to watch a movie that I can believe this is what's sort of happening, even though I know it's a Hollywood movie. Okay. But for the time I'm watching the movie, I want to believe that that's sort of real, even though I know it's fake. I just wasn't up to... I think I stopped wanting to watch the rest of it when the woman fell down the steps and hit her head, and I thought for a minute there was pool by her head. I mean, a pool of blood. She was at least dead, but somehow she wasn't dead. There were so many odd things about it. Like the husband was hiding in the basement, or it wasn't a basement. It was more than a basement. But he's hiding and happy.
Underground bunker.
Underground bunker, say. He's happy to be there, and the wife is working. I mean, what kind of a husband would let his wife work and he can't get out of the bunker because the
Well, I said
reason,
he had debts from the
debts.
loan sharks.
Yeah, okay.
Like, so he had borrowed
Well,
money from mafia people. So he can't really be seen on the
out.
streets.
Okay. Well, and the husband of the poor people was definitely not like the head of the family. I thought the boy of the poor boy was like the head of the family. And the big thing was they had a plan. You know, we have to have a plan. Well, when they were drunk and talking about how much money these people, the rich ones, were paying them, nobody came up with a plan like, oh, let's plan, you know, how we're going to get out of our poverty. There was no plan. They were what they wanted to, what they planned as far as this movie went was, oh, if we lived in this house, which room would you take? You know, that's what led me to think, boy, they're going to do away with that rich family. Oh, you know, so I was kind of waiting for them to do that, but then the movie took a turn. You know what? There were just too many loose ends, even from the beginning, as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, and then the son he develops a crush on the daughter that he's tutoring, and when they're all drunk having that party, when he asked the sister, which room would you have if you lived here, then he's telling the parents, you know, that he likes her, and once she enters university, he's going to ask her out officially. Then he daydreams aloud how if he got married with her, they could hire actors to be the parents so that the family could all keep the lie going. So, you know, instead of, you know, doing like the right thing, they want to even expand the lie and make it even
There was no
more
redeeming quality to this movie, as far as I was concerned. It didn't teach me anything. It didn't have a story. I mean, it had a story, but it was, I don't know. It didn't meet my standards, even though, you know,
So you're
to be entertained. No,
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
Well, are you
From
ready?
the
Are you
beginning.
ready for the big ending that you missed? Do you want me to tell you what the ending was?
Not really, but go ahead.
Okay, so the end of the movie, you know, it's the kids having a birthday party in the backyard, and the dad, everybody comes out into the backyard, and the dad announces that the family is going to start going to church more often, and then and that's the end of the movie. Everybody starts going to church more often. So
I doubt that that's the movie. Somebody was gonna die. Give me a break. I just wasn't up to it.
No,
Sorry.
that's cool, and you know, and you're right. You know, to watch like movies with murder and strange shit in it right before you go to bed is not
Well,
probably the best idea in the world. Because
you
we've been
know-
watching educational stuff during the daytime, and then we'll watch movies at night.
Yeah.
But
Well, is it worth my life, my 2 hours of my life, to watch this movie? You know, I'm watching more movies now than I think I ever did because, you know, we're quarantined.
yeah, well, I think you know, I'll give you a break on any movies that I like for the next few weeks, and you know, we'll watch all these movies from the 50s. I got Marilyn Monroe movies, Cary Grant. I got you know, every movie Audrey Hepburn ever did, Gregory Peck. You know, there's a lot of 50s movies classics we can visit.
I would probably enjoy them better than these artsy movies.
I think so, definitely.
Okay.
So that's our list of movies that we've watched since the last time we talked about movies. And the other update I want to give the listener is that now, after 2 months of playing Scrabble, my mom has learned my strategic tricks, and you're starting to win at Scrabble. You thumped me yesterday.
Well, that was 5 wins against 25 losses. But, you know, it's good to be able to play better so that it's not that boring for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's great when you use the strategies, and I think that Scrabble is the perfect mother and son game. And
It's pretty good. I'm enjoying it.
I played Zilch
Yes, that killed me. That
for 54
one.
points.
Yeah, well.
Of 3 days ago.
Yeah. Well, they landed on the right spots.
Okay, well, in closing, is there any happy messages or anything you want to say to the people of the earth?
Go out in the sunshine and enjoy it.
Walk in the sunshine. Look around your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's nice, interesting plant life and a farmer's market somewhere near in your neighborhood. And then my little hummingbird garden is really coming into bloom on my balcony now.
Oh.
That's another nice thing. I got 3
The sunflowers.
3 medium sunflowers that are starting to bud, and then 2 tall ones.
2 that came out already, and they're beautiful. I had to take pictures of them. And it's really nice to be able to walk outside with, we're walking with masks, of course. But I take the mask off when I don't see anybody nearby, and you can really feel the breeze, and that's something to be grateful for.
Yeah, it's really, really nice to get out and take a walk now every day because we weren't doing it for so long. So next week we're going to get back to books and all these educational great BBC documentaries we've been watching, and we'll get back to art and knowledge next week. But this week was movie talk. Okay. And thank you guys. I hope you're safe and happy. Keep it mentally strong wherever you're at in the world. And I heard from Matt in London. It's great to know that I have another listener in London. And that's it for today, everybody. Long may you live. Long may you live in the glory. And shalom, amigos y amigas. Hooray for humanity.
Tom Rhodes, you're a funny man. Tom Rhodes, you're an international comedian. Tom Rhodes, karate kick, baby, oh yeah. Tom Rhodes, you're a groovy dude. You go all around the world, telling jokes to all of the people. You are an international comedian. You're funny to everybody in every single country in the world. Tom Rhodes, I like you very much. I think you're talented and very wonderful. Tom Rhodes, you're the best guy in the world. I wanna be your friend, you should call me sometime. Here is my phone number, 603-644-0048. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tom Rhodes, you're an international comedic sensation. Tom Rhodes, I like to listen to your podcast. Tom Rhodes, you're the best man to ever walk on the earth.